Welcome to Something to Talk About from the Bainbridge Island Senior Community Center. Today we're going to talk a little bit about senior housing. The City of Poulsbo is soon to be opening some Nordic cottages in downtown Poulsbo, and we're also going to be talking about senior housing more broadly in our area. Before we do, though, I want to thank Fieldstone Communities of Bainbridge Island for sponsoring Something to Talk About. Fieldstone is the location up on Rolling Bay for independent living, assisted living, and memory care. To learn more about their program and facilities and to get a tour, they'd even be glad to treat you to a meal. Call Randy O'Neill or Sierra Wood, 206-594-1010. The website is fieldstonecommunities.com. And I'd like to also start by mentioning that we are meeting and living on the ancestral homeland of the Salish people, specifically the Suquamish people, the people of the clear salt water. Members of the tribe have lived on the waters of the Salish Sea since time immemorial, and we honor them and are learning from their stewardship of these lands and waters. So, Kimberly Hendrickson, you are very active in this work to try to create some housing for folks in Poulsbo. You're the director of the Housing, Health, and Human Services Division. Tell us a little bit about the Nordic Cottages project and where you stand on that.
Yeah, sure. And thanks so much for giving the opportunity to talk about this project. It is something like 5 years in the making and about 1 month away from move-in. So this is a really great time to share some news about what we're up to just up the way. Nordic Cottages was conceived of back in 2020 in response to a number of things, but particularly an opportunity that we saw coming in Poulsbo to be able to do a local 0.1% tax to raise some funding locally to actually add to our housing supply in Poulsbo. We passed that tax in 2021. Conversations about what we should do with those funds happened in 2020, 2021. And finally, in 2022, this idea of the Nordic Cottages really came to form. The cottages were designed by Matthew Coates, who I know you're all familiar with his wonderful design work on Bainbridge. They came together in a really terrific partnership between the city, who owns the land and is paying for the construction, Coates Design that is responsible for the look and the design of the cottages, BJC Construction, who's our project contractor, Gateway Fellowship across the way, who gave us the use of some of their land to help with parking, and most importantly, Housing Kitsap, our local housing authority in Poulsbo, who helped us with the build of the project and also will be managing it. I hope we talk a little bit in this conversation about how promising it is for a city to partner with a housing authority or a CHODO like you have on Bainbridge Island, because it really leverages the power of a city to do more when they're working with a housing authority or a CHODO. Just in terms of the specifics of the cottages, it's 4 very small 1-bedroom units. Great location right next door to the Poulsbo Library. It really is the introduction to our downtown. The design is gorgeous. I've learned a lot from Matthew and his team about Nordic design and how playful and colorful it can be. Each of the apartments comes equipped with amenities that you might expect in a larger apartment. Full kitchens, washer dryers. There's some great common areas, including a community garden that we're calling the Hope Garden out in the backyard. So happy to talk a little bit more in detail about what the cottages look like or intended to do, but just in general, small, highly affordable housing for low-income seniors and low-income adults with disabilities. It's going to be run by Housing Kitsap, and because the city of Poulsbo owns it, both the building and the property, it's a way for us to keep this permanently affordable.
So there's obviously, you just said qualifications about income, age, and or disability. Can you say a little bit more about how that will be managed?
Yeah, that is one of those examples about why the city needs to partner with a housing authority to make a project like this work. The city doesn't have any expertise in screening, eligibility, tenant selection. Housing Kitsap does. So we're piggybacking on some of the standards and eligibility rules that they already have in place for other units that they manage throughout Kitsap County. As you said, we're looking to house older adults 62 plus, looking to house adults with disabilities. There is a cap on how much income you can make in order to qualify. And that cap is for a couple of reasons, right? Like the whole point of this project is to help our low income residents and folks that work in Poulsbo. But the other reason that's so important is we're accepting federal and state funds for this project. And there are qualifications that are connected to those funding sources that mandate that we serve 60% and even 30% of the area median income of the folks that live in cottages.
Which, can you quote what that sort of dollar amount is?
Yeah, give or take. Remember, these are very small apartments. Up to 2 people are allowed, but I would imagine they're ideal for 1 person. The income cap for 1 will be around $23,000. Again, I don't want to speak for the housing authority. Housing Kitsap will ultimately determine the eligibility standards, but that 30% AMI is right around 23,000. Phedra, hop in and correct me if I'm shooting too low. Is that about right? 23 for 1 person?
The 2025 limit is 26,150. So you were close.
Phedra Elliott from Housing Resources Bainbridge also joining us. Thank you very much.
My lifeline. Thank you, Phedra. Yeah, 30% less, around 26,000. The ultimate determinations will be made by Housing.
Right, and then so is that's then there's a subsidy involved in helping to pay that, right? Which is you talked to me a little bit before we were on the call about this, about the idea that it's centered in the housing. So can you say a little bit about how that works and why you feel like that's a good system?
Yeah, bringing that up. So the Department of Housing, Health, and Human Services is relatively new in Poulsbo. It's been around since about 2020. So I'm learning as I go. And when I took the position, my assumption was that HUD tenant Section 8 vouchers were really an ideal way to go for affordability, because when somebody has a tenant-based voucher, it means that there's a dollar value that travels with them when they're looking for an apartment that can help cover the cost of rent above 30% of their income that they pay. What I've learned over the past few years is that these individual or tenant-based Section 8 vouchers don't work well in places like Poulsbo, where our rents are so high that you're not allowed to use a tenant-based voucher to live there. So what we've discovered through the course of designing and building Nordic Cottages is the city and the residents are far better served by what's called a project-based voucher program, which means that every unit at Nordic Cottages has a project-based voucher attached to it. So whoever lives in those residences, as long as they income qualify, will always be connected to that voucher as they live in their home. Better yet, I'm told by our friends at Housing Kitsap that when people leave a project-based voucher property, they also have the ability to take that voucher with them if they need to go someplace else. So it's really the best of both worlds. And by using a project-based voucher in combination with the city owning this land and this building, the residents are guaranteed to have permanent, deeply affordable housing as long as they continue to income qualify. And the project's going to flip.
Right. So you know that it will be there for people in the future, which I know is one of the things that Phedra, you have been working on at Housing Resources Bainbridge, is thinking about ways that we don't just have a one and done opportunity for affordable housing. We preserve these properties so that they retain their affordability into the future. So you mentioned a minute ago, Kim, the idea of either working with a organization, the city, and an agency, and you also used another word there that escaped me. Maybe it's an acronym.
Yeah, Phedra, what does a CHODO stand for?
Oh, Community Housing Development Organization. It's a HUD designation.
Yeah. Right.
So what?
We're still a CHODO and not a housing authority. Is that correct?
Yeah, HRB is a CHODO, in a nonprofit housing provider can be a CHODO. Essentially, it means that you there's a number of reasons or another number of qualifications, but one big one is that you have members of the board of the organization who are part of that low income community or who are representative of that low income community. So that's a big tenet of becoming a CHOTO, which we do at HRB.
Okay, you're breaking up a little bit there, Kim.
Oh, sorry. I just want to say that in many ways, housing authorities and CHOTOs are very similar. I'm glad that Phedra's pointing out the differences in governance. But my point before is when a city is able to partner with a housing authority or an organization like HRB, it really increases the power and the ability to leverage and to do projects. It's a really nice concept.
Yeah, well, and I'm thinking that one of the big benefits to making this happen for the city of Poulsbo is to have decided to have a Department of Housing and Human Services, which we don't enjoy at the city of Bainbridge Island, right, Phedra?
That is true. We do not have anybody doing that particular job.
But
there are some members of the staff that are working on affordable housing and housing issues for sure.
And you have done projects, obviously, with cooperation with the city.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
And so those, you would agree that when we can make it happen so that you're not out there entirely on your own trying to solve this problem, we're more successful.
Yeah, absolutely. Partnerships are huge. Partnerships with the city, partnerships with other organizations are very necessary. The funding, in order to be competitive for grants at the state level and the federal level, having those partnerships and showing local interest is key to being successful.
So I know that I've heard Phedra say any affordable housing is good. It sounds like this is a good foot in the door, and I'm thinking that that you're hoping to do more things like this going forward, right, Kim?
Absolutely. We're a tiny city, right? 13,100 people, according to the sign when I drive to work in the morning. We need to do more to provide affordable housing, but not just affordable housing. There are really important new requirements coming from the state under something called House Bill 2020 that passed several years ago that mandate that counties and cities plan for housing all along the economic spectrum. So we have a planning department in Poulsbo that's terrific in thinking about like the whole range of affordable housing that we need in order to grow in a way that's compatible with our growth management plan. At Housing and Health and Human Services, I really focus on the needs of our most vulnerable low-income residents of Poulsbo. So that act I referred to a second ago, that HB 1220, has a provision in it that talks about the importance of step housing, supportive housing, shelter housing, transitional housing, emergency housing, permanent supportive housing, all for people that are making 30% and less of our county's average median income. I think it's important that Poulsbo continues to plan for affordable housing across the spectrum, but my personal interest is thinking about how do we serve people that are the lowest income that we value as community members and want to support and stay. So yes to all of it, but from my perspective, particularly folks that are really struggling at the lower end of the income bracket.
Well, I've been watching the work by the Planning Commission here on Bainbridge Island about trying to meet those planning goals for the comprehensive plan and the Winslow sub-area plan. I know that there's been discussion of those various different income areas. One of the reasons we're talking about this today is because of the idea that the Nordic Cottages are focused on a senior population. Phedra, have you felt as though on the island, the biggest effort has been, which is my impression, that we've been working on workforce housing, that we have people who would like to work here, who have to commute long distances, and we'd like to have a broader range of options for people like that. And maybe some of the senior challenges are a little lower down our priority list?
I guess I don't know from the city's perspective if that's true or not. On Bainbridge, and I'm sure in Poulsbo too, there's no lack of need amongst any group. And so, any housing, as I have said, is good. HRB in the last several years has focused on smaller units, though none of our units are required that you be a senior or disabled. Smaller units tend to lend themselves toward that. And the biggest, or about a big portion of our wait list is senior, older persons looking for housing. And so we do see a lot of need in that area. Our most recent units at the Oliver are all small units, so that lends itself to, and we do have a number of older persons living there. And then our newest development, which is currently under construction, Erickson, is going to be 18 units, and of that we'll have 12 one-bedroom units. And the funding requirements in that building do require a set aside for older persons. I think we have 6 that are definitely set aside for 65 and older. So yeah, there is definitely a big need. The island, and as well as probably all of Kitsap County, is aging, and we have a number of older people who have significant housing needs, very low income, and the need for that. So
right, and it's been difficult to obviously find market housing that meets that need, or people
absolutely.
who are being priced out of their homes because they bought them with an income that would never sustain the taxes on it today.
Yeah, correct. Yes. And the project-based vouchers that Kim was talking about are so key to helping subsidize rent for folks. You know, most of HRB's housing is what we call low income housing, not subsidized housing. So we have an income level that we're serving, but those tenants do have to pay rent. And so it can be a very narrow band of finding someone who's in the right income range, but also has income to afford that rent. The voucher is super helpful because we can accept and work with people with really low incomes and know that we will get the rent we need to operate, and they will also get a unit that they can afford to live in based on the income that they make. So we currently have 7 project-based vouchers in our portfolio, which we recently acquired from Housing Kitsap, which is great. And then we will also have 7 more in our new building at Erickson. So we're really excited to be adding that, because that is a huge need. Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, go ahead, Kim.
I know Phedra's a part of lots of conversations about what cities can do to continue to build for affordability and provide more affordable housing. For me, one of the most important steps that could be taken, and this is outside of our control at the city level, is to make more project-based vouchers available. They're in very limited supply. We struggled to get the 8 that we needed for Nordic Cottages. This all rolls back up to the federal government and HUD rules. So, you know, it's outside of our control in most ways. But from my perspective, having project-based vouchers are great for the residents, of course, but it's also great for the city because it's guaranteed rental income, which helps pay back the debt, which helps us reinvest our money to build another project. So if we can make these housing units pencil in a shorter amount of time with reliable rental income from vouchers, it gives us freedom to invest that money in another project, and then another, and then another, and affordable housing becomes something that's sustainable.
So that's housing and urban development, HUD money. And then there's also some support, as I recall, from USDA rural development funds. Do you guys use any of that money?
USDA does also have a similar subsidized unit program that is usually it goes into low income housing tax credit projects here. For example, there are some of those USDA subsidies in projects on Bainbridge at Island Terrace, at Virginia Villa, and also Winslow Arms, I believe. And so there's a lot of, there are vouchers through USDA on those. Actually, not Winslow Arms, that's HUD, but Virginia Villa and Island Terrace for sure.
Right. So
how you get new ones, I don't know.
And right now, there's probably a lot of questions about that. It sounds.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah, and so that's, although it does sound like the sort of thing that might be a bipartisan value, because not only in our communities, but in communities all across the country, having these project-based vouchers can make people who do the work you're doing more successful everywhere.
I would like to hope that's a bipartisan effort.
Maybe it's one of those things that can slide under the radar and just get passed. So in just kind of backing up a little bit from your perspective, what are each of your perspectives, what are the biggest sort of next steps that we need to take to continue the good work that you're both doing to try to make more multi-range housing available? How can we as advocates help on the local level at least, and certainly by supporting these programs when we talk to our Senate?
Phedra, do you want me to go first?
Sure, go ahead.
Okay, so I'm going to come at this from my very particular perspective here, which is my interest is housing for very low income seniors. And when I'm looking at recent data from the point in time count, the homeless unsheltered count in Kitsap County, and see the numbers dramatically increasing across all age populations, and am well aware of the fact that many of our unsheltered folks in North Kitsap are 65 years of age and older. My first priority is focusing attention on the needs of very low income seniors, to bring people with chronic health conditions living in their car out of homelessness, and to just do better by our older population that's really struggling financially. I think it's important in that context to not just think about housing, but think about permanent supportive housing, housing that has supports in it. So somebody that has a high level of medical needs or behavioral health issues has the support that they need in their home to stay safely in place. Because if that doesn't exist, and this is something Phedra and I have talked about for years, you're using emergency systems, you're using hospitals, folks are just getting kicked out of their homes and cycling through emergency and police and other 911 systems. It's costly, it's cruel, it just doesn't work for anybody. So I guess my first attempt to answer your question, Reed, is like, let's keep thinking about very low income seniors and understand that housing alone will not be sufficient. We need to have more housing in Kitsap County that actually provides for the medical and behavioral health needs of people that we're trying to serve.
Yeah, I guess the other thing I'd add, we're going to talk on Monday actually with Fire Cares, with Julie at Fire Cares, about the kind of that's one example of support beyond fire and medical responses and police responses, which often result in the kind of tragedies that you were just talking about. Phedra, anything you want to add to the idea of what we can do?
I think on Bainbridge Island, like in many communities, we are severely underbuilt with housing, and this is a problem that is long in the making, 50 years or more. So we need to just create more housing that is affordable, more housing that is affordable to middle incomes as well. We need to have the zoning and programs through the city available to do that, which is what, as you referred to Planning Commission, they've been grappling with that for the last several months. We need to continue that conversation and move it ahead. There needs to be more subsidy and funds available to do the construction, because it is incredibly expensive, especially trying to subsidize units and trying to get units, low income qualified units built. So we need to open up that availability for others, developers, to participate in that. HRB cannot build all the housing on Bainbridge Island that's affordable. It's just not tenable for us. So we obviously are doing what we need to do, but House Bill 1220, as many people know, is requiring Bainbridge Island to prepare over the next 20 years for 1,900 more units of housing. Most of that needs to be affordable. So we have a big job to do, and there's no perfection in doing this. It's process and trying and doing things and trying to make it work. So, yeah.
Okay, well, you were just saying something about having a community-based housing organization or a agency not being able to do the work by themselves, that we're going to need to involve developers and contractors. So what, in your judgment, what kinds of things can we do to incentivize, to make it so that there's that it, as the developers like to say, pencils out?
Mm-hmm. There has to be a kind of a plethora, a menu of items, density bonus, for one, allowing more to be built, parking flexibility, allowing developers to have flexibility to determine what is best for their project, subsidy available for developers so that they can add those units that serve the lower income ranges, and know that they have the funds to get those units built along with their other units. So yeah, there has to be a variety of things put into place to make it possible. Partnerships, making sure that developers who do this understand that at the end of the day, if they have a rental project, they don't necessarily have to be the ones to do all the income qualification and all that work. HRB does that. We're here to help with that and to work with other developers for that. We do that on behalf of the city of Bainbridge Island right now. So yeah, there's many things that need to be done. There's no magic silver bullet. We have to try all of these things.
The other thing that it seems to me, which both the Erickson project and Nordic Cottages sound like, is we don't need to have big projects. We could have a number of smaller projects and it still might work. It also might sort of fit in better with doing what we can do over and over again. Any thoughts on that, either of you?
I'd very much like to speak to that, Reed. We were very strategic with Nordic Cottages and wanting to build small and have something that was beautiful and complemented the surrounding community. This is the first city-led affordable housing project in our history. And we knew for it to have community support and get the traction to excite people and developers and donors potentially to want to do this again, it had to be the scale of Poulsbo. So I strongly agree. And, students of urban history are well aware of the perils of building big and not taking care of properties and having things that are resented by the surrounding community. I'm a huge advocate, especially in a small city like Poulsbo, of building small scale that fits in with the neighborhoods around it. I'd add one more thing on a related point, and I keep using the word beautiful. I think it's really important that we take design seriously, not just simply for the convenience of residents, but to enhance the look of neighborhoods that have affordable housing in them. I know this is something that HRB has taken very seriously, and it was a very important decision that we made to contract with Matthew Coates in order to show really how enhancing affordable housing can be, something that increases property values and makes a neighborhood more desirable instead of detracting from it. We in Poulsbo think that's very important, and it really is bearing fruit in the way that the Nordic Cottages have turned out.
I would say that I agree with Kim. There's room on Bainbridge Island. There's room for both things, for larger developments and also for smaller infill developments. I think it's important that we focus on allowing both of those things to happen. In the funding world in which we live, often larger projects are necessary to receive funding, so it can be difficult to fund small things. It's not impossible, and it is easier now maybe than it used to be. I think there's more acceptance of that. We're doing an 18-unit building. You all did 6. We got funding from the state, both of us, so that's great. But sometimes housing tax credits require larger numbers. So we are definitely beholden to the funders in which we have to choose from, unfortunately. Yeah. And then as far as beauty and the way it looks, I agree. I mean, our housing, we take pride in our housing and keeping it up and making sure it looks nice. We don't want people to know where our housing is. We don't want it to be obvious because we want it to blend in and look like everything else. So, I often get asked, where is your housing on Bainbridge? And my answer is, it's all over, and I'm glad you don't know. In fact, we took down all the HRB signs from our properties many years ago because residents didn't like it. They didn't want to be called out for that. And we agree. We want them to feel like they blend into the community as they do. So yeah, we think design and all that is very important. And our housing is built durably, sustainably, beautifully. We don't, we use, products that any of us probably would be and are proud to have in our homes and probably do have in our homes. So.
I went to an event that hosted, was it 2 years ago, Phedra, on social housing in European countries. And thinking in a different way about having affordable housing be something that communities are proud of and a place where people want. That's a kind of spirit I'd like to see come into Kitsap more than it is now.
Agreed.
Well, that sounds like a good way to end this, because I think we would all, at least I would like to join in saying that would be exactly the kind of experience. I think that communities are stronger with more diversity, and economic diversity is a key part of that. One of the things that I so enjoy about working at the Senior and Community Center here is that we have people from every economic strata, if you will, able to get together and play mahjong or petanque or discuss Shakespeare or whatever. And line dancing, of course, is the most popular. But and that's an incidental when you look at it, and it draws richness and also an awareness of maybe the way that our decisions affect our neighbors.
Reed, I'd like to make one quick plug before we conclude. It's something about Bainbridge Island and Poulsbo working together that means a lot to me. There's a bridge that separates us, but we're all a community. I really think of North Kitsap as part of, this. It includes Bainbridge Island. We're all working together, thanks to leadership at the City of Poulsbo, at Bainbridge Island, at the Kitsap County Commissioner level. We are meeting regularly as something called a STEP group, that shelter, transitional, emergency, and permanent supportive housing category of low-income housing. Representatives are meeting on a regular basis to talk about, if we're going to build more of this very low-income housing for our vulnerable residents, like our seniors, how do we do that as a collective, and not just as Poulsbo and not just as Bainbridge, but actually combine governmental energy and do this together? So really happy to be a part of that, and really pleased to be working with Bainbridge Island.
Thank you very much for giving some of your time today to get us up to date. Phedra Elliott and Kimberly Hendrickson, I appreciate your time. I learned a lot, and I'm sure that our followers will as well. So have a lovely afternoon and a good weekend, and we'll talk to you soon.